good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Johan Verkoten. I'm Strategic Business Development Director Europe at Ampeco, and I will be chairing today's discussion that we will be having during this webinar. I would like to warmly welcome all of the audience to this e-mobility webinar, where we will discuss the challenges and opportunities ahead of charge point operators in 2024. So the coming hour, I'm having the pleasure to discuss this interesting topic with the three great panelists in front of you. First of all, Øystein Thomassen, CTO of What If, Wolf Slachter, CEO and founder of DXBE, and last but not least, Christian Haan, CEO at Hubjet. So although you are very familiar faces for most of the people who are listening in, I would like to ask you guys to shortly introduce yourself. So before I go and set the scene, please tell the audience something about who you are, your role, your experience in e-mobility, and how much you are looking forward to the webinar we are hosting today. So let me have a look at the order of my screen. I will ask you, Wolf, to introduce yourself first.
Yeah, good afternoon from Berlin. My name is Wolf Slachter. I'm CEO of DXBE Management. I'm working in the EV segment since more than 10 years, roughly 12, 13, something like that. And I'm building up lots of, let's say, CPOs, or have built up in the past. At the moment, we are still working on international cases, so no longer Europe, mainly US and Asia. So these are the I would say, the battlefields of the future. And from that point of view, yeah, I was also the startup ramp-up CTO of Ionity and several other CPOs and EMPs I've built up as well. So, for example, also digital charging solutions in Munich, at this time at the very first beginning, owned by BMW. So from that point, yeah, thanks for being a guest star. So jumping in for the next guy, maybe Christian, or you want to follow, or?
Happy to do so. And yeah, my name is Christian Haan. As said, I'm having the role of leading Hubjet. Hubjet is a global e-roaming service provider. We are connecting thousands of CPOs and EMPs with each other to make the business more scalable. In addition to this, we have launched a plug and charge globally as well. A great technology to make charging even more seamless. And yeah, very happy to be part of this. Thank you, Johan, for inviting me to this very interesting webinar today.
Absolutely. Øystein.
Øystein Thomassen. I'm in Bergen, Norway, CTO of What If EV. We are a destination CPO. We provide owned infrastructure, and we are located in 6 countries in Europe: Norway, Sweden, Germany, Austria, UK, and Ireland, and looking to go further on further countries. My experience in new business is only 3 years, so quite a rookie. 7 years as a driver, though, EV driver. For this kind of webinar, never been to anyone before, so it's a new learning, but it's for me in this case.
Great. We will show you manage, and we will help each other out, so don't worry. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And before I pick your brains today, just a little bit of housekeeping. I would like to explain the audience who's listening in that we have some great functionalities that we would like you to use today. So if I'm correct, in the middle of your screen, you see Q&A, which means, of course, that you can ask us some questions. So please pop in your questions in this part, and it enables you, of course, to be part of the conversation today. But please note that the time is limited, so it means that we will pick some of those questions while the discussion is ongoing. But we have 60 minutes left, and we have tons of experience, as you have heard. So we will have to keep an eye on the time as well. During the webinar, there will also be a poll, so we will ask you for your input as well. You will see it on the screen as soon as we are there. And there, I would like to ask you to take either out your mobile phone to scan the QR code, or go to Menti, enter the code in Menti, and make sure you provide your input. So if you have heard in the introduction, I think we have been counting together. We have almost around 40 years of e-mobility experience. And I always say I count them as dog years, so it easily multiplies to 80 years. So I think we should be good for today. it's more than clear for everybody that I think that we have a great panel here that should be able to entertain you around the topic of e-mobility for the coming 60 minutes. So let me first show you very shortly the agenda. So before we go into the panel discussion, I would like to talk you through the EV industry overview of 2023 and also some key trends and highlights that we've been selecting and seeing around in the market for this year. And then we go into the panel discussion topics where we asked the panelists for their expectations and predictions, but also we will discuss the biggest challenges and opportunities ahead for CPOs in this world, of course, because challenges always come with opportunities, is how we like to phrase it. So we will definitely zoom into that in the coming hour. And then last but not least, we also look at the use cases with the biggest growth potential as well, closely linked to the other topics. So before we dive into the panel, I would like to present you some of the slides that we've been preparing to look back at the year of 2023 and always also looking forward to the prediction of coming year. So first of all, if we look back at last year, what we see is that there are more than 14 million electric vehicles sold worldwide, from which a bit more than 9 million were fully electric. So if we look into China in that case as well, what we see is that the market share for passenger cars that are fully electrified was around 32.5%, which is quite an impressive number, of course. And last but not least, if we look at the global perspective of this, 17% of all the cars that are sold in the world were electrified. And if we dive deeper into some numbers, so what we see currently, there are around 1.2 million public chargers installed during 2023. And next to that, we see very big investments happening in EV charging, with China leading the game of 19 billion of investments into EV charging only in the last year. What we see as well is that currently Europe is winning the game in the sense of when it comes to public chargers compared to the US, where they have around 165,000 charging stations. Well, if we look at China, we see in a way that they are in their own league, I would say, with 2.7 million public charging stations installed. And a nice side note here as well, I would say that today I saw a message on LinkedIn from the president of Avera that he visited a charging hub of Shell Recharge and BYD in Shenzhen, where you saw in total that there were 258 charging points at one location with a minimum output of 250 kilowatts. So it's quite impressive to show, to see those sites, but I think what we also can conclude from here, from these numbers, but also from those kind of examples, is that e-mobility is here to stay, and we are only just at the beginning of the global electrification, I would say. So if you look at some trends from past year, first of all, I would highlight the high power charging hubs. So what we see here is that there's an increased interest of those high power charging hubs. So different startup, but also well-established players are currently running and turning into serious high power charging into serious markets. There are heavy investments going on in this segment, and the game of site selection, I would say, is on. So high power charging operators, they need to secure their spots on the market, both on highway locations, but also further away from those locations, closer to the city centers. We also see different focus with the hubs, where you can find everything, for example. So different type of hubs where you can do some test drives with electric vehicles, where you can do some shopping in shopping malls, but also on the other end, we see locations where you can just charge your car for cheap prices with no amenities on the side, for example. So I like to call them the Ryanair of EV charging. And of course, there's a lot in between. If you look as well at e-mobility investments, we have seen very big investment in the year of 2023. Electra, for example, they received a staggering 600 million for their expansion. Driveco, they have invested or got an investment of 250 million. And I think another nice example is Iona, an initiative in the US that is launched by 7 leading automakers, like, for example, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Hyundai, and some others as well, that are currently planning to install around 30,000 high-power chargers in the coming years. And I would say, some investment will be needed there as well. The question is now, of course, how will those parties will deliver on their investments and how the related rollout is going to happen, because those are important topics that we will discuss the coming 60 minutes as well. We see some use cases that are evolving. So news around truck charging, different partnership announced, big investments, locations being launched as well when it comes to those sites, and the race in the truck segment. I would say that in a way it's being won at this moment by the electric powertrains. So also the retailers are installing charging stations is what we see. Sometimes they are operated by the partners, but there's also an interesting shift going on where we see those retailers operating their own sites because they have the locations, they have the visitors, so they have an interesting position here as well. Shortly, if you might all know, Tesla opened up their network, of course, to third-party OEMs in Europe, but also in the US recently. And next to that, we see the adoption of the NACS, the North America Charging Standard Protocol, that comes with that as well, as an alternative, how they call it, to CCS. Let's see how this develops going forward, but at least this is one of the things we've seen happening. And last but not least, when it comes to policy and regulation, we see that this has shaped the market as well in the past year. And we are definitely confident that this will also shape the market for the coming years as well, both in China with their net zero emission vehicles policy, in Europe with the Fit for 55, and also the Inflation Reduction Act that we see in the US as well. An outlook to 2024, to mention some numbers here. For this year, the expectations are that we will reach around 16.7 million EVs at the end of 2024, meaning a total of 2.7 million EVs that will be added this year, meaning a growth around 22% in the coming year as well. If you look at the total numbers of public charge points, it's expected that 1.6 million charging stations will be added in the coming year. If we look forward towards 2030 even, it's expected to grow from 6 million is the prediction in 2025 until 12 million in 2030. And we are only talking here about public charging stations. So imagine all the charging stations at home, at office locations. There's a tremendous investment needed going forward into this to reach those numbers. If you look at this slide and you see all the growth numbers, I would say that many businesses would be very happy with those, and we are as well, I would say. But what we see is that the prediction that have been done previously are being turned down a bit. So the EVs are still being sold, but potentially less than expected when the prediction were done for coming year. And this is the case because we see different subsidies from the governments are being slimmed down, limited choice of affordable EVs. We think that that's a very important influence factor as well, especially for the EVs around $40,000, I would say, and also the higher discount on ICE vehicles. But I would say nonetheless, the interest also, if you see the growth numbers in EVs, is still very high from lots of people. Yeah, let's see how that evolves in the coming year and who is the closest with the predictions. So looking at some trends and highlights for the coming year. So what can we expect? If you look at the OEM sales, potentially on the percentage of growth, they might be slowing down. So we currently see that early adopters have adopted in a way, meaning that we are entering the next phase, which we call the early majority. So this means that the cars need to become more affordable in this phase to be able to be bought by the majority of people. So since most of the EVs are still expensive, there are definitely interest from people in driving electric, but the prices have to significantly drop. And if you saw recently in the news with the Kettle that they announced that the price drop of 50% on the batteries, we hope that this will definitely be an accelerator to produce those cars more affordable. Preparing for scale will be an important topic. So the networks are all growing. There's a high demand for those charging stations. But the question that operators need to ask themselves, am I still able to grow with the same processes, systems, and people that I have in place? We see the same question here at Ampeco, where potential clients are asking themselves the question like, okay, from a software perspective, the current platform I have Does it still fit my future needs and the growth that I'm expecting? And the same counts for whether parties can keep growing with the same processes and people that they have in place. So let's see the coming year with all those predictions, all those investments, how that will turn out. Charging station reliability and utilization. So we still see that this reliability is lacking. Networks are struggling with this topic. The reliability can improve, let me call it that way. And that, in the end, if this will improve, the utilization of the charging stations will improve as well. Looking also at this topic about customer experience, still charging of experience of the people can improve. The tariffs are sometimes fuzzy and unclear. Different mobile apps are needed to do some charging, and the communication of a charging station status is also not always right. If you arrive at the site, it showcases available, but it's not, or even occupied, or even not working at all. That is not the best charging experience. Let me call it that way. Energy management, those charging stations need to be rolled out, but we all know that grid connections are limited. So the question is, how do I make the most out of my existing grid connection? On one hand, to avoid upgrades because they are expensive, or even avoid asking for a new grid connection, which, apart from the fact that it can be expensive, it can also take years before it's realized. And then last but not least, multi-dwelling homes and also public charging. Currently, we see that around 80% of the people that drive electric can charge at home. But when those cars become more available, affordable by the mass as well, it means that multi-dwelling homes, public charging, etc., will be utilized much more because those people will be charging on those locations. So naturally, we want to dive into the panel discussion with all the great panelists that we have in front of us. And the first question that I would like to ask you guys, so if we have a look at all those developments that we have seen so far in 2023, but also the predictions for this year's, I'm really eager to hear from you guys as well. Please provide us with your one EV charging highlight from 2023, and also please give us one prediction or expectation for the coming year. And let me start here with you, Christian, to share your perspective on this topic. So please provide us with one EV charging highlight and prediction and expectation for the coming year.
Sure, happy to do so. I think my highlight, especially about 2023, is that we have finally seen the publication of the half-year regulation. Super important topic to give clarity on what can we expect from the regulatory side. And of course, we can now endlessly discuss if all things have been done great and so on. But at least now we have some reliability, what is being expected and what not. And expectation for this year. Johan, I would like to connect to your statement that probably 2024 will be a very relevant year for the future market, because we see, of course, that EV sales are not growing as much as we would like to see for reasons. On the other hand, of course, this is now forcing all of us to focus even more on proper business cases, right? Because in the last couple of years, you also have seen a lot of strategic investments, strategic activities, great. But now it's really about how can we set up proper business models. And I think that will all help us to move forward when then, let's say, the hockey stick starts again and we see a lot of EVs being sold again to the market. That's what I expect for 2024, especially.
Great. Wolf, your perspective.
So my event of the last year was Tesla with the announcements of a NACS new plug. And I think this was one of the major topics what we had from, how I say, going to market strategies and changing, let's say, the world, especially in US. But these influences you had with the announcement even jumped over to Europe, because lots of OEMs as well as hardware manufacturer has to adapt something, as well as charge point management system operator as well. So at the end of the day, I would say this was, from my point of view, the announcement of the year. Personally, well, I would say what we have seen so far and which will go on, we see some new trends with, let's say, battery-driven high-power chargers, wherever the grid is not available, where you can, how you say, where you only have 50 kilowatts, for example, on a depot or a site available, then use, let's say, a typical high power charger combined with a larger battery, and this in a kind of, let's say, embedded solution, to avoid, let's say, efficiency and so on. So the efficiency should be very high. It doesn't make sense to operate with, let's say, a battery and a charger which is 10 meters away. So you see that, well, efficiency is going down. And so that's what I think. And this is quite new, because we tested already these activities, I would say 5-6 years ago. But there we have seen that, especially on the cost side, it was not attractive enough. Now you see with the growing amount of EVs and also second life batteries, a little bit more coming to, let's say, the market, then it makes it more attractive even to build these kind of business models, especially in locations where you will not get the grid as you were looking for. I would say this is one of the moving topics even for this year, because that's, from my point of view, one of the, I would say, the growing amount of CPOs which are jumping on these kind of solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a great bridge also to you, Øystein, from your perspective as a CPO.
Yeah, as a CPO, yeah, for us, we see that it's finally starting in the UK and EU, Germany, and the other countries around. We started in 2021, and it's kind of a slow start for those countries. In Norway, we have a good start. You know, the penetration, the EV penetration in Norway is quite high, so we're kind of in a luxury position there. But it's, we see that, yeah, 2023, EU and coming now, so we're ready. And I have, as we are destination charger, we make agreements with landowners, hotels, and everything. So we see that's finally starting to roll for our side. But 2024, I don't know what's happening. You have this regulation, but everything is coming. So it's like, yeah, we don't have, we from our side, we want to grow. We carve out, we buy the merger and acquisition, we buy companies to grow as fast as we can. We see, of course, that the build out is a bit slow, but it is, we need to go, and we look into it to going even faster now as it gets more attention in Europe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I can say that.
And maybe you can directly elaborate then on the topic when it comes to network rollout, Øystein, right? So there are already a few things mentioned when it comes to the network rollout, right? So selecting the right sites, make sure that everything is installed properly. I can imagine that those hands that needs to make things happen can also be a challenge, right? So from your perspective as a CPO, when we look at the topic of network rollout, can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah. For my part, most important thing for us is that we sign agreements with companies that have many outlets, the hotels with many hotels, hotel chains with many hotels, workplaces, parking operators, and in that way we start of targeting their locations and check their sites, and then go into the it's not are there enough grid capacity. So we kind of that's the way we drill down, and then we see that when we have a contract well landed, we're ready to build. We see that it's really important to have as much done before when we do the really rollout. Everything, the charger needs to be fully prepared as much as we can, connected to the backend, even when it's installed, because we see that the setup and installation takes time if we need to, to rely on the local electrician. So everything needs to be as ready as possible when the network is rolled out or the sites are rolled out. That's really important for us to be able to have kind of a turnkey out in the field, which makes then it build out fast. Of course, there's a big problem with a grid connection in many locations. You need to wait for many months, even a year. So that's quite hard to kind of anticipate when you're going to build it. And also in Norway, we were supposed to have a lot of capacity, but we still know we can wait many months before even if we're able to turn the key to turn the locations on. Yeah.
So can I say on this perspective that efficiency, so it's not only about the rollout itself, but especially also the preparation when it comes to this rollout is an important topic for you guys?
Yeah, it's really important. We also see that When it comes to rollout, if there is a large destination charging locations, we also need to secure that we have a proper network connection, because it's important to control all the all the elements of the charger, not only the charger itself, but also the network is really important for us. So we also make sure that we have full control over the network, not only the charger, so to speak.
So it's not only about securing sites, it's also about securing good grid connections, I would say. Maybe
it is.
Also a nice bridge, Wolf, to you, right? Do you see the same topics where your clients, as a consultant, that they are struggling with those topics? And maybe you can also weave in the international perspective here, right? So we have a very international audience, and we know you work internationally as well. So feel free to do so.
So from that point of view, I would say there are some countries where grid is very easy adjustable or available. So for example, these countries which have grown extremely in the last 2 years, and this is especially France, for example, there the grid is low cost, I would say, and even from that point of view, it's available. This is one topic. What I have seen, what you mentioned, Øystein, as well, site selection is priority one, and grid capacity as well. On the other side, what we have seen from that point of view, the cooperations between a CPO, which is not a utility, with a utility is important, especially to connect some activities. And yeah, especially if you go international, we have seen lots of cooperations in the last years and partnerships, even between OEMs and utilities. I would say this is also a little bit a trend which is coming up, to find the right partner for the right country to roll out, and that makes even business easier. From the perspective of connectivity, you're right, Øystein. I would say also, let's say there are two further topics which you should own, and this is on the one hand side, let's say the SIM cards in your charger. On the other side, it's a payment and all the payment topics, which have become more complex, especially with AFIR. So I would say we can take a look later on in the deep dive, but these are the topics where our customers, especially in Europe, are looking for. Internationally, it looks a little bit different. If you go, for example, to Australia, New Zealand, or we have customers in Saudi Arabia as well. So, well, it's a challenge to get the grid, and even to find the right partners, which are not existing, or you even do not have data you need for, let's say, site selection and site search. So that's still a challenge in some countries. I would say not in Europe, because the market is extremely penetrated at the moment. So I was in Italy a few weeks ago, and so we did some site search and site selection, and even in areas where you would never expect a charger, there it was quite difficult to get one, because the site owners are, I would say, waiting for the best offer right now. So it's a kind of a battle what you have in Europe, what has come, especially if you have sites which are close to, let's say, supermarkets, motorway exits, or let's say opposite a McDonald's, Burger King, or a fast food restaurant or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going on, and there you see, I would say, a high impact on the costs, especially to operate these sites. If you're partnering in a kind of a, well, I make a renting contract and I'm not buying the site. If it's not possible, then you have to rent. So that's, I would say, the current trends in the market.
So the challenge is not only to find the right sites, but also to convince the site owners to get you on that site, basically, right?
Exactly. So if I'm gonna offer additionally maybe a car or something like that as a goodie, then it's maybe easier in some cases. What we have seen that happens in the market. So yeah, to convince a site owner that I'm the right guy, which is investing in the infrastructure or in the site.
Yeah, and interesting to see, by the way, as well, that the things that are taken into account with this topic. So we also saw a heat map of, for example, where do you have stable grid connections and those kind of things. But I can also imagine when we talk about this topic that utilization is very important. And I think from your perspective, Christian, like if all those sites are being rolled out, all those sites are there. It would also be interesting to hear from you, like, how do you make sure that the interoperability on those sites, for example, is well established, and people know where to find, people know where to go to charge their car. How are you supporting that from HubCheck side?
Yeah, a very good question. Thank you. Yeah, as I said in the beginning, as a roaming service provider, this is exactly our core business, right? Connecting CPOs with as many EMPs as possible to not only make new charging locations visible in no time, but also to make sure that customers are going there. What we definitely see right now is that, let's say, the time until a new location is being properly utilized is being a bit extended. Let's say in the past, a new location which was much easier utilized properly than nowadays, which I think is also a bit affected by the market development, right? We're selling a bit less EVs than expected, but still we install a lot of new locations. So probably there's a kind of link on this topic. Again, in the future, we will see a lot of more EVs, so that probably will be changed. But on the other hand, what we also see a bit, at least in our data, is that customers are becoming a bit more selective on which charging locations they are going to for normal day-to-day charging. Of course, when you're going from big city A to big city B, then you're probably using a lot of highway charging stations. But if you're just doing your day-to-day charging, then we see that customers are becoming a bit more selective, which I think is a bit connected also to the reliability topics we already have discussed in the beginning, because as complex it is to set up new charging locations, it's probably even more complex to operate them in a way that they are available as much as possible. Not only because of the complexity on the CPO side, but we also see a lot of new OEMs in the market, right? So we can't be sure that every new EV is working as it should be. We are missing still standards in our market. Most standardization activities haven't been as successful as possible. So right now we're all running on different protocols, different versions of protocols, and even more different interpretations. And that, of course, is having a huge impact on the question if or if not a charging station is successful. And therefore, we believe this is becoming definitely a very relevant competitive factor that charging point operators are very much focusing on a higher level of reliability, which I said is quite complex, but probably becomes also more decisive factor, because we see that customers are starting to become a bit more picky, so to say, on the charging locations they are using. And if they made a bad experience with a charging station not working, probably they will never show up again, which of course then impacts your utilization for the future.
So what do you see, Christian and Johan, as well, is kind of a, how you say, if the site is not running well, you have opportunities to optimize this. And this is what we have seen on some business models, like with a forecourt, or bringing some, how you say, mini supermarkets in place where you can pick and pack, for example, whatever you're looking for, toilet papers and so on. So from that point of view, that's an opportunity. The same what you have on the old petrol station business. Like 80% of the revenue has been generated by let's say the mini supermarket, or the robotics inside the mini supermarket. I think this is a way where you can even, how you say, make it more attractive, and even you can, how you say, produce some value-added services, even assets, which is, for example, for CPO is quite interesting and important, because at the end of the day, if you're selling or you're having an asset in your accounting and books, then it's much easier even to get to the next funding round.
So I see also here a question from Hassan from the audience about the negative profit of lots of those CPOs. So what you say is not only make sure that you select the right sites and opening new sites, but especially also looking at the topic of, okay, I already have sites. How am I going to improve the profit on the sites that I already have, right?
So optimization is a must-have. So you can't place some, I would say, 10 times 300 kilowatts high-power chargers somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So you have to promote this a little bit better. And so far, I would say, especially the site partners and the opportunities you have there, they must fit to the behaviorals of the customers. And that's also what you have seen from multiple, let's say, topics in the Nordics, where the penetration, maybe Øystein can confirm this, where the penetration on the charger is going up, and we have seen some chargers with 60 charging sessions per day or even more in Norway on a high power charger. So you could imagine that a driver is then not staying there for 25 minutes or something like that. They are calculating different. And that means calculating, well, I have to drive 100 kilometers and I know that I can charge in 5 minutes. I have the 100 kilometers in my battery. So that's the thinking of the people out there. If you know that there's a new charger somewhere else or coming up on my route, then it's easier. So they are not charging, let's say, 38 minutes, what they did in 2017, when Ionity started with the first charger parks in Denmark or somewhere else. So you see that the charger must fit or must be scalable to, let's say, the behaviorals of the customers. And that means high power charging, more 800 volt cards in the market. That's a challenge for everyone who started years ago. So they have to adapt, let's say, also their business model to these, let's say, changings on the EV side. Christian?
Agree on that, Øystein?
Yeah, I can certainly see that change in Norway. We stay for a lower time. It's not like the 40 minutes, whatever, to get full charge. You just charge and continue to the next one. It's on a route because it's there. The number of charge points in Norway and HPC charge points are quite high now. So you kind of shop around and visit many on your destination or your route from, let's say, Bergen to Oslo. You maybe stop on 2 or 3 on the way, not only one. So that's you're really correct there.
And do you see charging speed having an influence on that as well, Øystein, from your perspective? So the charging speed.
Can you repeat? I lost your words there.
Yeah, so I say the charging speed of the charging stations. Do you see that has an influence on this topic as well?
Yeah, it certainly has a topic. We see that in Norway, even if we have high power chargers, it's the speed is not that good, you should think, because some of the chargers are quite old now, because it's not the latest generation with 800 volts, 900 volts, with up to 350 kilowatts. It's actually a bit, the infrastructure is quite old, but so the charging speed is not that high as well. So it's a kind of a mixed market there, actually. And I would see that, I guess in Europe, when it comes to the build out there, they are all the newest, the latest tech, which means that you have faster speed and the newer cars. Compared to Norway, where I don't know, the average age of the car is a bit older than the one you have in Europe.
Yeah. Okay, and maybe one last topic when it comes to this network rollout, quite related to that, of course, is around the regulation. So if we look at this regulation, we already touched upon that very shortly. Christian, from your perspective, what are the regulations where we should really keep an eye on for the coming year?
I'm happy to give you an answer on this, but before doing so, I would like to come back a bit to the conversation we just had. Because I really want to highlight once more that reliability is one of the key success factors of operating charging infrastructure. Like any other infrastructure as well, it's exactly the same topic there. And I really like the idea of to set up supermarkets and things like that. But I believe this is probably a business model which is not really usable for every CPO. I think before doing so, I think we need to find a better way how to use charging stations in a reliable way, right? And we see right now on our roaming platform huge differences in regards of successful charging starts, and of course it's connected to old hardware for sure, but it's also connected with a lot of other issues. We already spoke about mobile phone connection, and probably this problem becomes even bigger when we have then payment terminals with additional SIM cards, which maybe are having a different operator, and so on and so forth. We mentioned that interoperability is one of the topics. A lot of new EVs are out there, great, but how to make sure that they are running as they should be. We have seen in the past that this was already a challenge, and it seems the challenge becomes a bit bigger, at least with some brands. And therefore, we really would like to, I would like to highlight that reliability is, from my point of view, as important as finding the right location and having the right network connection. But quite often we see a bit that this is a bit underestimated, because I said the customer, if they're going to known charging stations, they will never go again to a charging station where they already had a bad experience. They will choose a different one. And we know that this
I think the same side counts for the CPO, right, Christian? So
exactly.
Also thinking about the old sites that you are operating, they leave an impression of you as a CPO as well, right? So not only focus on reliability on your new sites and that you have slick charging stations, good site layout.
Yeah, we have calls in the call center which are costing a lot of money as well and things like that, right? So therefore, we truly believe that this becomes a more decisive factor. And maybe the market will even provide solutions saying, hey, reliability is with this charging station higher than with this charging station. So please, dear EV driver, go better there than there. This will probably change with how the market is running. Again, I'm also saying that there could be probably also business cases for, let's say, low quality CPOs as well, for sure. Again, like we see in other markets. But right now, quite often the issue is high prices, relatively low level of reliability, and probably that will change over time. But coming back to...
Okay. I see you raised your hand as well, maybe very shortly, and then we go into the poll section.
I just wanted to comment on the reliability. We see that we need to select the correct charger. It needs to be connected properly, as you said, good network, and having a good backend. Yeah. So and the charger must speak the OCPP protocol. We see that all the old installation, obviously a flaw in the protocol, coding or whatever, it doesn't work really well because it doesn't behave to the protocol. So that's a really important. We test the charger properly, and that is what we don't. If the vendor comes and says, we have this charger, you want to use it? No, we test it properly internally and with Ampeco in this case. And that's really important. And we see that all the sites we've done there is very little downtime on the charger because we have control of all the elements. So it's really important to make sure you have control of all the elements. So that's why
again, not only preparing, when you talk about the rollout, prepare a proper rollout, but also prepare proper reliability is how it sounds, I would say, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, maybe Wolf, last
finally,
point.
Finally, I would say data. Data is the new gold of EV or EV charging. To be honest, I'm preaching this since 6-7 years, and Christian knows this from the past conversion or conversations we had even in 2017 on that point of view. So collecting data, you as a CPO, that's very important because I would say you can even save lots of money, especially on the operational side, as Øystein told before. So you have to be, the grabber of the data. Otherwise, you will fail at the end of the day. And what we have seen in the last years, especially from new CPOs, they are focusing more on these data topics than, let's say, the old players years ago when they started. Then the charger was the holy grail, and the charge point management system and the data was not that not that important. But this has changed tremendously, I would say.
Yeah, so the software becomes even more important. I think that's a great end of this topic. So let's maybe go to the poll. Baitjo, if you can, my colleague, if I can ask you to bring up the slide on the screen. I still see some nice questions also around, for example, the home charging and public charging ratio. I think that's a nice one to tap into when we go to the topic of the different use cases that become even more important, or what we see for developments on that side. But first of all, I would like to ask the audience, like said, please scan the QR code. I'm currently missing let me see, maybe it's put in the chat exactly. So what are the biggest challenges? I see the answers are already coming in. Reliability. By the way, the guys from the panel are not allowed to give their input, so it's coming from somebody else. Availability, grid connection, location.
So I'm still missing OCPP 2.0.1 or something like that.
It's not there yet, but now you've mentioned it, Wolf. I'm sure it will pop up somewhere. Let's see.
More charging, maybe.
Yeah, a lot around site. I think a nice one here as well. I saw it going by somewhere, if I'm correct, but as soon as you see something, it's already gone. Was about customer experience when it comes to sites, right? So And maybe that's also related to that around how do you attract people to your sites, I would say, or EV drivers. Is there somebody from the panel that would like to?
Maybe I can jump in a bit, because I also have seen some questions on truck charging as well, or commercial vehicle charging. I think this is very much related to this, that getting the customers to your location also needs to have the right information in place. Wolf just mentioned examples in regards of what are additional possibilities, how you can spend time around the charging station. But when we talk about truck charging, especially when we talk about truck charging going abroad, then of course we need to provide much more information, starting with the size of the parking lot, right? For passenger cars, nobody really is interested in how big the parking lot is in front of the charging station. For e-trucks, it's super relevant, it's crucial.
Yeah.
Same for the question, how high is the roof? We spend years on talking about, do we need to put roofs in place or not? Great conversation. Now we see more roofs, but we don't know yet how high the roofs are. So can I drive with my truck below it or not? Where are the outlets and all these kind of things. So we definitely see that for these kind of use cases, the available information is not yet sufficient. And the challenge, of course, is, like we have seen already with passenger cars, getting access to all this information on a European level probably will take some time, but we need to start from somewhere, providing more and more information also for these use cases as well.
Yeah, so it's not only about if the information is correct, but also about the type of information that is being shared. That is also evolving over time, because indeed, if you build a roof that's too low and a charger or a truck is driving below it, you can fill in the challenge that you have. Oysten?
I just wanted to add one more specific example. Sorry for this, but roof and things are fine, but also available power level, right? We just spoke about it. It's great to charge as much as possible. Cool. If the car can do so. Again, we see just a limited amount of cars who are able to charge very, very far. But then again, I'm going there. I'm now thinking, okay, I'm now putting 270 kilowatt in my car, and then only 50 kilowatt are coming out of it because of limitations on the grid side. I think this kind of information we need to make much more available so that customers can choose the right location for their needs.
Yeah, Oysten.
Yeah, one important element is the profitability, which if there's no profitability for the CPO, the money will stop. There will no one will be willing to invest, because then it stops. So we've seen, at least know that many players that lower the prices so low, they sell out the business, they stop, because they lower the prices so much that they can't handle it. So they're going to sell out the portfolio. So the profitability is important to keep. To have a good profitability in all the sites you have. Of course, some sites will be non-profitable, but of course, as much as you can profitable. That's really important. Otherwise, it will stop.
Hey, and maybe what I've seen coming around as well a few times is uptime. Maybe that's a nice bridge also when we look at the evolving use cases for the coming year, right? So one of those is, for example, the operational fleet. I always like to use the example when I was in consulting. And I was not able to charge with my car on the office. I could not charge my car, but I could still charge my hours. Let me put it that way. But if you look at those different use cases from trucks that we have been discussing, or just commercial fleets, if you cannot charge, you can basically not do your business. So Wolf, is this also one of the use cases you see should have an important focus for the coming year?
Definitely, yes. From the truck side, it's a little bit like a chicken-egg problem, or an egg-chicken problem, how you describe it. As you said, depots are complex. And even if you have a 200,000 square meter depot somewhere for trucks, with 100 bridges where you can, let's say, load and unload your trucks, well, you could imagine that the amount of EVs or trucks are not able to charge simultaneously or in parallel. So this is not possible. So I would say even this use case is 12 times, that's how I describe it, more complex than simple CPO charging on a motorway, say it like this. Because you have to reserve. That's one topic. You have to bring in energy management. You have to bring in load management. Maybe the site has already photovoltaics on the roof, so inverter topics, whatever. And at the other side, when it's not possible, to charge on site, because the ownership structures of these depots are not normally not that way that, well, the logistic company is also the owner of the depot. There are two others between at the end of the day, and so the owner has to do the invest at the end of the day. That's a critical thing, because high power charging, or in the future megawatt charging on a depot, is not so easy as it looks like from outside. So you need a plan B, and that means mainly, well, I have to find an alternative, maybe outside the depot, so in public space. But then it's also, I would say, critical. It should not be too far away from, let's say, where the load or well, I would say the trailer has been loaded or unloaded. So these, I would say, this is only in a nutshell the discussion how it looks like and how complex, especially the truck charging is. But what I've seen in some countries, let's take an example outside Europe, there I would say I have different market approaches. So for example, let's take the Saudi Arabia case, or even in India, where you have lots more of, let's say, business related activities. And then we are talking about, you are using a truck to earn money and all waiting times are not paid, say it like this. Then you see that in some countries, there's a trend where the e-truck activity, especially on the last mile, is pushing a little bit more than, let's say, the EVs in general. So you see some changes, because especially, let's take these markets where you did not have any EV at the very first beginning. There we see some, how you say, different approaches than in already, how you say, penetrated or highly penetrated markets. Maybe Christian can jump in, because he has a, I would say, maybe a deeper view into these, let's say, different activities.
No, I can just support your statement, Wolf. What we see right now is that truck charging is on the rise, right? There's a lot of interest and a lot of also relatively much money to be invested into this topic. On the other hand, you perfectly described it. Depot charging sounds easy, but in reality, it's quite complex, especially as probably also the company who's operating the depot doesn't want to invest all the money by themselves. They're also looking for ways to refinance the charging investment, probably by sharing with others, maybe not over the day, but over the weekend or night times or whatever. So interoperability, accessibility comes into the game. And on the other hand, what we, at least as we are subject believers, that probably the number of players in regards of truck charging will be a bit lower than for passenger cars. On the other hand, the complexity is much, much, much more higher. Just talking about reservation, right? As you said, Wolf, when you're going from A to B, you need to be 100% sure that your reserved charging station is available for you as a truck driver. The challenge is, right now we don't even have reservation on wide scale in place for passenger cars, and if so, it's not super reliable. But for trucks, it needs to be 100% reliable. Maybe also you need to reserve the parking lot as well, because when we're going around highways, we see it already. Most parking lots are overloaded in the evening because all the trucks are parking there. How to then secure your parking lot in front of your truck charging station? So therefore, we believe the complexity is much, much, much higher. And we would love to see that the European, at least the European industry is aligning a bit more on these kind of things. But for now, maybe it's not yet very realistic, but over time, we hope that things will be a bit more harmonized, because as you said at the beginning, not that many standards, a lot of industry-driven protocols and APIs, but we need to get to real standards. We need to align on things to increase the reliability of investments, to make sure that we not need to change and operate different versions of a protocol, right? As much as I love to talk about OCPP 2.0.1 and 2.1, but the downside is more than 50% of the charging stations are still running with 1.5 and 1.6, and this is what we need to change. And
feels also a bit like this use case is basically a way, something where everything comes together. So you need sufficient capacity because they need to be charged, and sometimes as fast as possible. I think there will be a good mix between those fast charge, because they don't. Sometimes they will stay at a certain location. Reliability, uptime, interoperability. Basically, in the perfect world, everything comes together here in truck charging, where those CPOs really have to deliver, I would say. Øystein, your take. Sorry, I see you raise your hand.
Yeah, it was just a comment to what the other said. At is that we see that load management prioritized. Load management is really important with charger responding very well. We see that a couple of examples in, for example, Sweden. So bus truck depots, okay, their capacity, but the management system currently in place and the chargers, they don't handle it very well. So it's really important to have, as I said again, good chargers verified and proper load management with priority. That's what we also see.
Yeah. And maybe nice to tap into the, we are talking here about use cases. So I see a question from Jan Garnier about the forecast for home charging and public charging ratio for the next few years. I can imagine maybe not the precise forecast, but how do you guys look at, maybe stay with you, Øystein, how do you look at this home charging, maybe condominiums or multi-dwelling homes, how you see it? What's your take on that use case? And will that change?
Yeah, we haven't created any numbers for that for our sake, but we see that the home charging, multi-dwelling units, home charging, and public charging, it's a little bit different from Norway compared to other countries, as there are a lot of owned homes and home chargers. But we see that it's for future it's important to have one good user experience, having both. If you see the point. So if you have one, what to say, one operator or one app that is doing everything for you, that's an important thing. So we have one thing to keep track of. We also see that when it comes to the home charging and multi-dwelling units housing, we see that there's a lot of consolidation because there's a lot of small CPOs and they are not making money, as I stated earlier. And we see now that they need to sell out the business and do something else because there's a lot of car out and buyouts and consolidation in the market there. So we'll see a few operators in the future, fewer CPOs. That's very important, at least for us as a destination charger, and it's that market we are in.
Yeah.
Christian.
Maybe just to add to this point, that's exactly also what we believe, that the differences between public and private charging will go away. Of course, we started like this, right? Public charging, digitally connected to backend systems, private chargers, not that much. But with all the changes, increased regulation, fleet services as well, we believe that private charging stations, most of them will be also digitally connected. And then, of course, it doesn't play a difference anymore if it's a public or private charging station, as long as the processes behind are available in a similar way. Of course, probably you don't need to pay for every charging station at your wallbox, but when you want to do smart charging, when you want to identify who's now using this wallbox and things like that, it's very comparable, probably even the same you're doing with public charging stations.
Yeah, so basically energy management, maybe it's not a use case in the sense of like truck charging, home charging, etc. But I think what this energy management use case is that it's really common to all the different use cases, right? So
it's really important. It's
exactly
still, and also in the multi-dwelling units, because there's requirements. You have a certain amount of chargers, but then of course you need to share what's there. Sharing is caring. You have a certain capacity, and then for us, like destination charge, your home charge, you can share what you have there for a longer period of time. It's important to share what you have, because to build out new grid connection more, it's too expensive to tackle in the short term.
Yeah, Wolf.
So from that point of view, I would like to add the topics of V2X and V2G, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home. This is how you say the end game at the moment, I would say, especially for home charging. What we have seen in the market, that the EVs are already, or not all of them, but the main manufacturers are running into V2G activities. In the mass, it could work on the one side if the hardware is ready, and that means the charger must be bidirectional. Must have a capability to charge bidirectional. And from the backend side, I would say that that's not the big thing. But at the end of the day, it's the hardware and the cost of the hardware. Because at the moment, I would say, especially if you take a look on the market, the hardware is still the limited factor. So let's say the charger hardware is a limited factor to grow this. And the products, as Christian said, so from that point of view, I think, well, we run into OCPP 2.0.1, which can make this happen. At the end of the day, bi-directional. So I think it's important, even for the standardization, what we have seen, that we have to push this in the business.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wolf. Christian, maybe your last take on this, and then looking at the time.
Okay, happy to do so. I just wanted to also respond a bit to V2G. I'm a bit less optimistic, frankly speaking, because right now we see a lot of proprietary solutions on this, and I don't think that I hope that we don't do the same mistake again like we did in the beginning of e-mobility, that we are very much relying on proprietary solutions, because customers will change their EV and then they are stuck to a wallbox which can only work with one OEM, and then these kind of things. We need to align on how to do this in a similar way, best case even globally, because the customer needs are the same. But right now I'm missing a bit the initiative. On the other hand, of course, we also see that energy markets are working very differently all over Europe, and probably that also needs to be a bit harmonized. But let's see. I think it's very exciting to now look on the next couple of years. On the other hand, as I said, I think what is relevant is making sure that profitability becomes more relevant, and we talked about a lot of topics, how to increase this, right locations, right reliability level, right service offering. But the good thing is that will happen because we are just in the beginning of the industry. So therefore, the next couple of years.
Enough time to learn, enough time to execute, I would say. So I think looking back at the webinar, right, I think some of the highlights, or at least points that we should take into 2024, are around reliability, interoperability, regulation, keep an eye on that as well, but also uptime, energy management. And I think the nice thing that we should take into account, that it's not only about execution, right? It's really also about the preparation for the execution to make it more smoothly, to roll out the network, to prepare the grid connection, to execute the installation of the hardware, and to operate your network, basically. So, guys, I would like to thank you all for watching this discussion, but especially also a big thanks to the panelists, also for making my life easy to have such a great interaction all together. So thanks for that as well. Last but not least, I would also like to invite the people from the audience, and of course the panelists as well, to stay tuned on the next webinars that we will be organizing. The next webinar will be around how to build EV charging solutions with the Ampco Developer Hub. Again, there we will invite some great industry experts to have a very fruitful discussion, like we, in my opinion, had this today as well. So again, thank you very much for joining. Thanks for your participation. Enjoy your day, and we will see you around, definitely. Thanks all.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.